Mary had a little man.
We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream. Change has come to America.
Believe me. Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Some of the biggest stars and top executives at Fox News were privately making fun of former President Trump's claims about election fraud, even as the network was allowing those lies to be promoted on air. That is according to damning messages in a new court filing that was out yesterday. The messages are included in Dominion's $1.6 billion defamation lawsuit against Fox News. They show that Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham brutally mocked the 2020 election lies that Trump and his allies were pushing at the time. In one exchange, Carlson texted Ingraham saying that Sidney Powell, that attorney who was in and out of the Trump White House, was, quote, lying, and that he had, quote, caught her doing so. Ingraham responded, Sidney is a complete nut. No one will work with her. Ditto with Rudy. He continued, quote, our viewers are good people and they believe it. Joining us now with his reporting on this lawsuit is CNN senior media reporter Oliver Darcy. It's remarkable to see these text messages, but also to have seen what was being said publicly. You know, I was covering the White House at that time to see how White House officials were watching to see what Fox was saying about the election.
I think these messages really just expose Fox News as a propaganda network. That's what they do at the core. I mean, they show in excruciating detail that the highest ranking executives at Fox News, Rupert Murdoch, Suzanne Scott, the CEO, as well as some of the top hosts, like you just mentioned, Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham, they privately knew these election fraud claims from the Trump team were nonsense. They used very harsh language to describe them, but they allowed these lies to take hold on the network's air. And these messages show that the talent over at Fox News and the executives were very worried after the election of the audience rebelling, that they were going to Newsmax. You'll remember that Donald Trump was attacking Fox News, saying, turn the channel, go to this Newsmax channel, which is saturating the airwaves with election denialism. They were worried about this. And not only did they turn a blind eye to the election lies, but they even, in some cases, tried cracking down on those who were fact-checking Trump. There's one case where White House correspondent Jackie Heinrich, she fact-checked Trump, and Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity behind the scenes were talking about getting her fired. That's how lacking of basic journalistic ethics were at place at Fox News, and these messages really expose it.
It's the case law. I mean, it's the actual definition of actual malice, which is what you have to prove if you're suing somebody who is a public figure for defamation. You have to prove actual malice. What does actual malice mean? It means exactly what these text messages show. It means that they knew the truth and they willfully disregarded it, that they knew that they were lying, but they did it anyway. And they did it, knowing that they were making fun of the person who was saying that Dominion was flipping votes. They knew it. They didn't care. They were doing it for ratings, or they were doing it for, money, advertising money, whatever. That is the textbook definition of actual malice in a defamation lawsuit. Dominion is going to prevail. Fox News, I don't know what's going to happen to Fox News. I have no earthly idea. I would love to see it, just disappear, or have to apologize to its audience, or make amends in some weird way, and tell people that they've been lying to them for, 10, 20 years or some such crap like that. Instead of, going all the way through, it will go all the way through the court system, which is rare. It is very rare for a defamation lawsuit to not be dismissed. It's very rare for a defamation lawsuit to make it to a jury trial. Mine did. But then when the plaintiff makes their case and they fail to show actual malice, meaning that the person who was saying whatever they were saying knew that it was a lie and was saying it anyway, when they fail to show that, because that hardly ever happens now in America, it happens all the time. Usually the defendant's attorney will stand up and ask for what's called a summary judgment, meaning they're asking the judge to find that the prosecution, the plaintiff, was unable to prove actual malice. They were unable to prove that the person they're accusing of willful disregard of the truth was not willfully disregarding the truth, that it might have been a difference of opinion, or it might have been that it was hyperbolic, but this here is that. This is an actual textbook case of what actual malice was designed to do. And that is to hold, and it's not just journalists, but to hold public figures accountable for their ranting and raving if they knew what they were saying was false and said it anyway. That's the standard. And it looks like that standard has been met through these text messages. And so it'll go through the court system, obviously. A jury, I think, will be able to find that actual malice occurred. And remember, Dominion is suing Fox and Fox News for $1.6 billion. $1.6 billion. And so rather than see, people retire at their advanced age like a Sean Hannity or a Lala Ingraham or even a Tucker Carlson, or I would like to see them have to get on the air and tell their beloved audience how they disrespected them, how they lied to them, how they continue to lie to them, continued after January 6th to lie to them about vaccines and about, how to protect yourself from preventable death, preventable viruses, and how they did it for craps and giggles, but money and profit. How they did it to them because they didn't respect them. They didn't regard them as being, people that they should be telling the truth to, or people that they value. Tucker Carlson, he's texting Laura Ingraham right there. And that's just one, little, exchange. This lawsuit is full of exchanges. Okay. And they're texting each other saying things like, our audience deserves better. Why are we lying to our audience? When are we going to stop lying to our audience? And then they get on the air and they continue to lie to the audience. They tell them anything and everything that they think the audience wants to hear, not what they need to hear, not what they must hear, not what's the truth, not what's, nothing valuable that the audience could orient themselves in this world and come up with, solutions for whatever it is that's bothering them, or whatever it is that is unfair, or whatever structural things are built in to a system in order to get over on them, which is what Fox News is designed to do. Fox News is designed to propagandize people into believing that everyone's out to get them, so that they will never figure out that there are things that are built in, like this propaganda machine, built into the system to disorient them, built into the system so that they can't solve their problems, built into the system so they don't know where to look to even begin to solve their problems. That is the function. That is what oligarchs like. It's what Rupert Murdoch does. It's what Fox News is all about. It's about disorienting people. It's about making people unaware of the actual structural built-ins that cause people to not be able to build wealth. Okay? In an effort to give the oligarchs all the advantage, all of it. And when I say oligarchs, I'm talking about like 0.1% of the population, not just in this country, but probably in the entire world, who would like to own everything. Everything. And you are just the unwashed masses, okay? You could eat cake if there is no bread. I'm serious. It is what this is designed to do to you. And it's kind of working. I mean, we saw violence against our capital for the first time since what? The British in 1812, right? I mean, it's very powerful to hear over and over and over and over and over, especially on the TV, because people don't think the TV would ever lie to them. Especially older people, they just trust that you can't say that on the TV if it's not true. They just believe that that's the situation.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Some anchors and staffers at Fox News knew that former President Trump's claims about fraud in the 2020 election were false, even though they supported his position on air. That's according to a newly unsealed document filed in a $1.6 billion defamation suit against the network. That suit filed by voting machine maker Dominion. The documents show internal communications between hosts, executives, and other staff, revealing they knew Trump's claims were false and outlandish, and that the presidential election was, in fact, not stolen. Those hosts include Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity. Fox has said that it stands by its 2020 election coverage and that its broadcasts are protected by the First Amendment.
No, they're not. You can't willfully lie to an audience and brand yourself news. You don't even have to be branding yourself news. My entire position on branding yourself news should come with some standards and practices. It should actually come with an ombudsman, a fact checker, who is, looking over your script for the evening and says you can't say that because you know that's not true. Or journalistic principles, meaning you have more than one source for what you're asserting or saying or, opining about if you want to brand yourself news. So the closest that we ever got to that is they're going, well, Fox has opinion shows and then they have the news block. This is the closest we've ever gotten to them saying that we're not really news. But this is willful. This is knowing what you're doing, knowing what you're saying is false. And you don't have to brand yourself news to be subject to the standard that is actual malice. That's, something that's actionable under our laws regarding what is free speech and what is not. You can say a lot of stuff. You really can. But you can't say a lot of stuff that is false and expect to be held harmless for doing that. And Dominion isn't going to sit down and take it because that is their business. Their business is running free and fair elections. That is exactly what that particular company is tasked with doing. And it's an awesome responsibility. They take it extremely seriously. And, the election in the end, and we know this from yesterday, too, another grand jury weighed in, and it was a unanimous decision by the Fulton County grand jury that said that there was no election fraud in Georgia that would have changed the result of the election, right? So numerous, over the last 2 years, eyeballs have looked at whether or not this was a free and fair election. And, people have deduced, all over this country, people who understand election machinery, people who understand the conspiracy theory that was being foisted on people, that Italian satellite. I mean, what's really crazy is that story about John Durham. Remember him? John Durham was, picked by Bill Barr, the Attorney General of the United States, to investigate the investigators who investigated whether or not Dominion was flipping votes. And they literally went together, which is just bizarre because the reason why you have a special counsel is to keep the distance between the Department of Justice, the government Department of Justice, and the independent counsel. They're not supposed to hang out together. That's why you choose somebody separate and outside of the DOJ to do an investigation, right? But that didn't happen here. They were best friends. They were palling around. They went on a trip to Italy together to look to find, from the highest levels of government in Italy, whether or not there were Italian satellites that were, deployed against the United States, and whether or not they were able to infiltrate Dominion voting machines and flip votes the way Sidney Powell was saying, that was going on. And you know what they found when they went together to Italy? They found financial crimes on the part of Donald Trump. And they didn't investigate that any further. That's how deep the fix was in for Donald Trump. That's how deep it was. So, obviously, this Italian satellite and the flipping of the votes thing was all bullcrap. And they kept on talking to Sidney Powell like she was real and she was going to bring the Kraken, whatever the hell that meant. They just liked it. They just thought that that's what their audience wanted to hear.
The president's path to victory here, as you and the legal team see it, if you could give us just that canvas very quickly.
Well, yes, Lou. The entire election, frankly, in all the swing states should be overturned, and the legislatures should make sure that the electors are selected for Trump, and it's going to have to follow the constitutional provisions that it be decided according to the amendment.
I mean, it's just it's crazy. It's crazy crap. It doesn't make any sense at all. But she's literally on Fox News Business advocating for swing states to throw out the slates of electors that the voters picked and to send fake electors, which obviously was something that happened. It's 16 people signed up to be fake electors in Georgia. So it's not just that Donald Trump was on the phone shaking them down, extorting them. It's coming from the president. I'm putting you on notice that you had a fake election. I'm putting you on notice. My lawyers are telling me there are different numbers than your numbers. And my lawyers are, Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani. And, they saw Italian. I mean, this is crazy. And people literally watch this stuff to the point of their own, making themselves sick or dying from preventable diseases. It is just so unbelievable. And the Fox News viewers are lied to so repeatedly and so, just like an endless parade of bull crap, right?
Fox has been doing this for years in a way that is fundamentally different from other media and other even opinionated media. Now, there were those public service announcements that said, the more you know. Remember that?
Yes.
Well, back in 2012, this is a while back, a study showed Fox viewers were also less informed than people who literally said they consumed no news at all. Think about that. You spend your time watching something called Fox News, and you end up statistically less informed than people who don't watch the news, period.
Oh, my God.
This is not journalism, what they're doing. What those results show. It's different than most other outlets. Take the Independent Pointer Institute, which found Fox and MSNBC were not the same thing. While both did have strong viewpoints, it was Fox that spun its own reality.
Its own reality. They're creating a world that doesn't exist for Americans to toil in, for Americans to problem solve in. How do you solve your problem if you're so confused as to who is creating the problem or where the problem is coming from? I mean, how in the world do you protect yourself from preventable diseases if you have a, quote, news channel telling you that the vaccine that will protect you from dying from a preventable death is more dangerous than the virus it seeks to protect you from? I mean, and now they're going after, listen, this whole vulnerable people thing in our country, transgender children, LGBT population, African American history. This is all a war on solutions.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844.
561-270-3844.
This is stunning, heartbreaking, infuriating, and the most unpatriotic acts I can even imagine for people in this country to have participated in any way, shape, or form. And I want the American public to know right now that we will not be intimidated. American patriots are fed up with the corruption from the local level to the highest level of our government, and we are going to take this country back. We are not going to be intimidated. We are not going to back down. We are going to clean this mess up now. President Trump won by a landslide. We are going to prove it, and we are going to reclaim the United States of America for the people who vote for freedom.
Vote for freedom. It's like, you're voting for confusion. You're voting for disorientation. You're voting for wackadoodles. You're voting for, cranks and crackpots. I mean, it is unbelievable. And this went on and on and on. I think they clocked Fox News telling the election lie 800 times in 2 weeks. 800 times in 2 weeks. Oh, my God.
Fox has been doing this for years.
Oh, sorry, I played that one. Listen.
Some of the most brazen acts of voter fraud to date.
There actually is evidence of fraud.
Sworn affidavits saying people are forging signatures.
Tampering allegations to the dead people voting.
How many dead people voted?
Interesting stories about dead people voting. Wow, amazing. What free and fair elections we all have confidence in.
A corrupt, stolen election.
The election was stolen from a president.
Oh, my God.
Another independent study found Fox cast doubt on the results about 800 times. 800. They counted just in 2 weeks after the election.
Oh, my God.
So that affects Fox viewers as well. A poll found 82% of Fox viewers falsely and wrongly believe Trump won.
Oy.
That may be a contribution of both Trump's statements, the Republican Party, and Fox itself. Dominion Voting Systems is currently suing Fox for defamation because it says many guests were allowed to repeat blatantly false claims attacking their voting machines. This is not about opinion, which, as a free speech person and a former First Amendment practicing lawyer, I will defend, including their opinions. This is about an entity that has news in the title but continues to make demonstrably false claims about all these issues. We've covered the COVID angle before, and that is a danger to Fox viewers. People who don't watch Fox at all may have better information. When we report on that, we report on it because it's important, and also out of direct concern about how a company that has its own vaccine policies and uses a lot of CDC-style rules to keep its own workers safe is telling its viewers false things that might endanger them.
Might endanger them. I mean, obviously it endangered them, and it made them violent. This whole anti-vax crap, this whole garbagey thing that they did. I mean, you know, Herman Cain died of COVID, for God's sake. You know, you had people just dying from what is a preventable disease. And Fox News, at the same time that they were lying to their audience who wanted to hear this disinformation, misinformation, this willful disregard of what the CDC and the FDA and the truth was about protecting yourself, and what the truth was about a free and fair election, causing people to, I mean, you have people that went to jail for Donald Trump, not for Donald Trump, instead of Donald Trump. Let's just say what that was, okay? People literally going to jail for a seditious conspiracy. People going to jail for being violent at the Capitol, for, you know, smearing feces on the floor of the United States Capitol because they were lied to so incessantly, so forcefully, so, you know, cavalierly, when they knew that they were lying. They were willfully disregarding the truth. That is a very high standard for free speech, okay? Free speech, you know, you could say what you think, you could say what you opine, you could say, but not if you know that what you're saying is a bald-faced lie. Not if you willfully ignore what's true in order to tell somebody something else. That would endanger them, or that would put them in harm's way, or that would cause them to be violent, or that would, you know, incite violence based on false facts. That is not free speech, okay? And it is so known to everybody who knows any of them, who knows Sean Hannity, who knows Laura Ingraham, who knows Tucker Carlson, that they were lying, and they knew that they were lying, okay? Rudy Giuliani was not going to ever be a truth teller. No one thought that. No one should have ever thought that. The idea that he, you know, that they treated him as if he was sane, that they treated her as if she was sane, or that she was saying something provable without ever seeing any evidence at all. Nothing. She produced nothing. At that point, there were 61 court cases, 61, and they lost all of them because they showed no proof of what they were claiming happened. They showed no evidence of vote flipping. They showed no evidence of people hiding ballots under the tables in Georgia. They showed no evidence of, I mean, and these crazy people, without any evidence, were exalted. They were hailed. They were made into royalty on Fox News. And people got violent because They didn't want to believe that the TV would lie to them. They just couldn't believe it. But that's why it's called propaganda. It's very powerful and it works. But in order to propagandize, you have to be willing to disregard the truth in order to lie. That is actionable. And that is what happened here. I mean, they're still freaking lying.
It's possible on this Thursday evening you may be wondering what the hell is going on in our country. There are so many unanswered questions, some of them lingering. How, for example, did senile hermit Joe Biden get 15 million more votes than his former boss, rock star crowd surfer Barack Obama? Results like that would seem to defy the laws of known physics and qualify instead as a miracle. Was the 2020 election a miracle? Honestly, we don't know. We don't expect to get an answer to it tonight.
That was last night. Yeah, that was last night.
Randy, do you think if they lose this court case and have to make a statement, God, that'd be great. Do you think the majority of their audience will just say, hey, ends justify the means, Trump's the best choice for this country, so I'm okay? Or will they actually start to reconsider what they're being told and, God forbid, even look somewhere else for news?
Brett, the damage is done. People are in the tank believing that fascism is a good thing for America. People are in the tank thinking that lies are useful, okay? If they are even clear that they're being lied to. And if the fact that they're being disrespected in their own homes every single night by these creatures who make $25-30 million a year doesn't bother them, then the damage is already done. However, it's a small sliver of our citizenry that watches this tripe, this swill, this garbage. But when you feed people garbage, you get garbage on the other end too, right? And damage gets done. Parts of the body politic are poisoned. I don't know how else to put it to you. Some of them died. Some of them literally died. And they really didn't care. Their audience meant nothing.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
I think the bigger story coming out of that is how disingenuous it was to be sending those texts of warning while then going on the air to the American people and doing a complete injustice and disservice by saying something completely opposite and ginning up this whole reaction that it was just fine and patriotic for people to be there on January 6th. You know, slowly but surely, this has morphed into eradicating any other point of view since the Trump era that is not just opinion. It's gone from an opinion, which was fine, to completely devolving into non-fact-based conspiracy theories and outright dangerous rhetoric in my mind. And I think it's a complete disservice to our country.
Totally. And there have been these bizarre moments when we've seen top Republicans like Senator Ted Cruz groveling on Tucker's show. I mean, did you ever think that day would come?
No. And, you know, I think that this is very upsetting to Republicans also, to be quite honest. I mean, I wish more of them would have the courage to do what I did, quite honestly, and come forward and take on a behemoth. But listen, for the safety of the Republican Party and for our democracy, I wish more would, because this is not going to end well in my mind. It's really hard to change people's opinions because they're only watching what they want to hear, you know, and that's the other problem that we have in society with the media right now, is that we're so siloed into only watching what we agree with. And so every day that thought process just gets reinforced time after time. I mean, there are some people, Jim, who actually, when I'm walking through the airport, still think that I work at Fox News.
Wow.
Because they watch only Fox News. And they never covered my story there, obviously. And so, you know, that's what they see and what they hear. Now, that works on the other side, too. There's probably people that only watch other networks that have another point of view. But I think it's incredibly dangerous to have. There's a big difference between having a conservative opinion and having one that supports conspiracy theories.
Oh,
totally.
So that was Gretchen Carlson, who obviously resigned from Fox News, sued Fox News for, you know, sexual harassment, and won One, when it was proven that Roger Ailes was, holding out jobs to women who he could, touch and feel up. They made a movie out of that called Bombshell, okay? And Gretchen Carlson is like, listen, it is demonstrably false what they're saying. They knew it was false when they were saying it. They just don't give a damn about it. And the problem is the damage is done. That answers, I hope helps answer Brett's question is, is there any going back? Well, no, not for 82% of Trump supporters. There isn't. They are in the tank with these lies. They believe them. They believe who they see on the TV. They believe in Tucker Carlson's, I'm just asking a question. And you know what's really sick is we know this. I mean, we do. I don't know how many people that watch Fox News are aware of this, but when Tucker Carlson was sued previously for, saying factless things, his defense in the court of law by virtue of a lawyer said no reasonable person would believe anything Tucker Carlson says. That was his defense, is that he's so unbelievable that a rational, reasonable person living in this country who has access to other fact-based newspapers and channels and news organizations, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, yes, MSNBC, okay? They're there. C-SPAN, 1, 2, and 3. New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal. They're all out there. And so his defense was no reasonable person would believe a word he said. And that actually passed muster. That actually was a defense. It worked. They know this about their own damn selves, but they look at $30 million a year and they say it's worth it for them to destroy this country's ability to solve its own problems. And they look at their audience and they look at them dying from COVID and they say, oh, well, it's the cost of doing business. Just like Norfolk Southern. Oh, well, it's the cost of doing business. So we damaged a flyover town in eastern Ohio. So what? 4,700 people. We'll give them $1 million. We'll call it a day. It's more money than they'll ever see in their lives. And so, who's going to remember 10 years from now when they come down with their weird, rare liver cancer that we did this to them? I mean, really, who's going to, buy into that? So this is what fascism looks like. This is what oligarchy is. This is how our country is being steered into the abyss. This is really where it wants to go. And by it, I mean the elite, the top, media moguls, the Norfolk Southerns, the Wall Streeters. This is exactly where they want to take this country, and propaganda suits their needs. It softens up the ground for fascism. If you do nothing but tell people they have every right to have grievances, and you tell them that, your grievances are valid and your grievances are real and you've been treated miserably, but it's gay people that did it, or it's black people that did it, or it's people that voted for Joe Biden that did it, or it's Italian satellites that did it, or it's, Sidney Powell's going to bring the Kraken and show you who did it. Then you're softening the ground and you're making it safe for fascism because you're saying, I alone can fix it. You want an autocrat. You want a Ron DeSantis. You want a Donald Trump. You want a strong man because you're so aggrieved and you can't figure out that it's built into the propaganda, that it's built into the system to keep you aggrieved and not allow you to figure out who's doing it to you. And I'll tell you who's doing it to you. Corporate America is doing it to you. Corporate America's greed is exponentially off the charts, okay? Every single damn day. There was another derailment at Norfolk Southern, same railroad. Another derailment yesterday outside of Detroit. Do you know that? And the first impulse for Norfolk Southern to put out a press release, their first impulse was to deny that there were any cars on that particular train that were carrying hazardous materials. But that turned out to be untrue. There were cars carrying chlorine, but it didn't. They didn't explode or leak or anything like that. And so they just you had Debbie Dingell, who's the representative for that particular district in Michigan, put out a statement saying there was a car with chlorine in it, but it was undamaged in the derailment. But why is that happening? Why is that happening? That's happening because, according to the employees, according to the workers inside Norfolk Southern and the other 115,000 rail workers who have been trying to tell us this is going to keep happening because they cut staff by 28% to save money. Okay. And they don't need to save money. They are extremely profitable, and they spent almost every dime on their profit on stock buybacks, buying back their own stock to increase the value of their stock. Now, why do people go along with that kind of crap? You know, you would say, well, if I know that a stock I hold is only being bought by the people who also, are running the company, why would I want to be part of that? Well, I'll tell you why, because that makes the amount of shares on the market fewer when they buy them back for themselves. And so when there's less shares to be bought, the value of those shares goes up. And if you're, somebody who's trying to create generational wealth, you're never going to sell those shares. You're going to pass them on to your heirs, who will then be able to cash out and not pay any capital gains tax. So it's a vehicle for the very wealthy to create generational wealth for their offspring, so that they will never have to toil on the railroad ever. But the people who work inside Norfolk Southern, I've played you videos of people telling you that, this is going to happen because they're cutting back on, inspections. They're cutting back on the people that do the inspections, the number of people, the actual number. The people who saw this derailment, who understood this derailment inside the company, they're so afraid to give their names to the newspapers today. So the newspapers are protecting their identity because they are so fearful of retaliation by Norfolk Southern. But they said, of course this happened. The trains are too long and they weigh too much, and they're doing it to save money on the amount of trips they have to make. So they're making the trains longer, and putting more cars on it makes them heavier. They refuse to put the electronic pneumatic braking systems on trains that carry hazardous material because Trump was willing to go along with their not having to spend the additional money on improving, the equipment to prevent these things. And they're telling you, of course it's going to happen again and again. Greed.
Mary had a little lamb.
False. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America. From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe me. Help is on the way. Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
We have now learned from a source telling me that Donald Trump's former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, has been subpoenaed in the special counsel's investigation into January 6th and the role that Trump played that day. I'm told that the special counsel, Jack Smith, is seeking both testimony and documents from Meadows. He got this subpoena back in January. This is the latest aggressive and significant move that we have seen from Smith. It matters because Meadows, as you know, has firsthand knowledge of Trump's actions on several fronts. He was in and out of the Oval Office that day. He was on that infamous phone call that happened in December between Trump and the Georgia Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, where Trump was pleading with him to find him more votes. Meadows was also in that bananas December 2020 White House meeting about election fraud claims. He also visited a Georgia audit site as they were counting and recounting votes. He sent emails to Justice Department officials about unsubstantiated fraud claims. His attorney in the Justice Department did not comment to CNN when we asked. It's unclear how he's going to respond to this subpoena. It will likely set up a clash, though, over executive privilege, given he was one of Trump's most senior aides.
I don't see, how there's an executive privilege, case to be had. First of all, there's only one executive at a time, and it ain't Trump right now, okay? It's Joe Biden. He's the executive, and he has executive privilege. That's number one. Number two, If you are committing a crime, you have absolutely no ability to exert any privilege, whether it's attorney-client privilege or executive privilege, or you cannot, in the commission of a crime, claim that your criminal discussions about how to advance your criminal enterprise is protected. It's not. So I don't see how there's a claim. But you know what everybody likes to forget about Mark Meadows is that Mark Meadows was on that Georgia phone call where Donald Trump was extorting the lawyer for Raffensperger, threatening him, saying, this is very bad for you, Ryan. His name was Ryan Germany. And the only reason why I remember that is because Donald Trump was saying how much he liked Ryan Germany's name. He liked his name, that his name was Germany. Love Hitler, like Hitler, I say love. But yeah, it was really creepy. And Mark Meadows was on that phone call. Mark Meadows went down to Georgia. Mark Meadows saw the counting room. Mark Meadows knew there was no fraud. Mark Meadows was the carrier of the messages of Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell to Bill Barr at the Department of Justice. So Mark Meadows got subpoenaed by Jack Smith, who is looking into two issues, not just January 6th, but he's also looking into the pilfering of documents, okay, the stealing of documents and the cover-up of the theft of the documents, which is always how Trump gets caught. That's how Trump got caught in the Mueller report, too. He didn't get caught colluding as much as we know that Russia interfered. That we know, because there were 13 indictments of Russians. One of them is this CEO of the Wagner mercenaries, Prigozhin, right? He was running the troll farm in St. Petersburg that was inundating us with, disinformation, misinformation, lies about Hillary Clinton, about, Pizzagate, about Hillary Clinton being, sickly and dying and having pneumonia and all this crap. It flies and sulfur and they smell like sulfur. And just all that crap was coming from Prigozhin's troll farm. But Meadows knew all this. He knew every little bit of what I just said to you. Up close and personal he was. And he still looked the other way. If not, look the other. Listen, this is what Cassidy Hutchinson testified to. Do you remember Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony with regard to Mark Meadows? I'll play you just a brief little, jog for your memory.
Ms. Hutchinson, do you remember Mr. Giuliani meeting with Mr. Meadows on January 2nd, 2021?
I do. He met with Mr. Meadows in the evening of January 2nd, 2021.
And we understand that you walked Mr. Giuliani out of the White House that night. And he talked to you about January 6th. What do you remember him saying?
As Mr. Giuliani and I were walking to his vehicles that evening, he looked at me and said something to the effect of, Cass, are you excited for the 6th? It's going to be a great day. I remember looking at him and saying, Rudy, could you explain what's happening on the 6th? He had responded something to the effect of, we're going to the Capitol. It's going to be great. The president's going to be there. He's going to look powerful. He's going to be with the members. He's going to be with the senators. Talk to the chief about it. Talk to the chief about it. He knows about it.
That's Meadows.
And did you go back then up to the West Wing and tell Mr. Meadows about your conversation with Mr. Giuliani?
I did. After Mr. Giuliani had left the campus that evening, I went back up to our office and I found Mr. Meadows in his office on the couch. He was scrolling through his phone. I remember leaning against the doorway and saying, I had an interesting conversation with Rudy, Mark. It sounds like we're going to go to the Capitol. He didn't look up from his phone and said something to the effect of, there's a lot going on, Cass, but I don't know. Things might get real bad on January 6th.
So that happened on January 2nd. That conversation with Cassidy Hutchinson and Rudy Giuliani telling Cassidy Hutchinson, we're going to the Capitol. The president's going to look really powerful. He's going to be with the House. He's going to be with the Senate. After Rudy Giuliani was all over Fox News, Sidney Powell all over Fox News, Jenna Ellis all over Fox News saying this is that Trump won in a landslide and feeding the grievance, feeding the fire, feeding the violence, inciting it, supporting it, telling people they had every right to get violent, sowing so much distrust for what was a free and fair election, in the systems, in the checks, in the balances, in the certification process of what was a free and fair election held in 50 different states with 50 different secretaries of state certifying 50 different elections as being free and fair elections, because that's the way the United States is. You can't even rig an election in the United States because each and every state has its own election. They knew what they were doing, and they didn't care. These people were disposable. You know what's so interesting is that the people that went to jail after they're sentenced, they always say, I don't know why I fell for this. I don't know why I believed him. I don't know why, but, you know, it's all done. Some of the Oath Keepers or the Proud Boys. I can't keep my white supremacist group separate anymore. There's so many of them, the Three Percenters, the Proud Boys, they all. Okay, one of them, I think it's the Proud Boys. One of them's on trial. His lawyer wants to call Donald Trump to testify about what Donald Trump was saying that actually incited them to do violence, believing it was the patriotic call of duty that they were answering, instead of a scam artist con man's a grift. And they want to call Donald Trump as a witness. You know, that will probably never happen. But why? Why not? Mark Meadows is not a target of the grand jury. You know how I know this? Because you can't call a witness to testify in front of a grand jury if they're a target. He may be a person of interest, but he's definitely not a target of Jack Smith and this the special counsel here. They just want his testimony because he holds the key that unlocks the door to the prosecution of Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, Jenna Ellis, and, of course, the big kahuna himself, the grifter-in-chief, Donald John Trump. That's why they want Mark Meadows to testify. Not because they want to put Mark Meadows in jail. And Mark Meadows knows this. And so does Mike Pence. And so all they're doing is trying to walk the fine line. They're trying to do the balancing act. They're walking the tightrope between pissing off Donald Trump and keeping their asses out of jail. Now, what's fascinating is Donald Trump's own lawyer, Michael Cohen, went to jail instead of Donald Trump. His ex-accountant, the CFO of the Trump Organization, is sitting in Rikers Island right now instead of Donald Trump. How many more people are willing to go to jail instead of Donald Trump? Because in the end, that's the question they're grappling with. Now, Mike Pence, he wants to keep the MAGA base, a group of people who wanted to kill him. He thinks he can get their vote.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
I recall Tony and I having a conversation with Mark probably around 10 a.m., 10:15 a.m., where I remember Tony mentioning knives, guns in the form of pistols and rifles, bear spray, body armor, spears, and flagpoles. Spears were one item, flagpoles were one item, and then Tony had relayed to me something to the effect of, and these effing people are fastening spears onto the ends of flagpoles.
I mean, they knew that these people were armed. They knew it. And they tried to tell us, that they weren't armed. Remember? They weren't armed. They were, it was a typical tourist day. They were unarmed. Who goes to a coup without arms, without weapon? Now we find out way after the fact, thank God for the January 6th Select Committee, right? We find out after the fact that there were weapons out the yazoo, okay? People were putting spears on the end of these, back the blue flagpoles and Trump flagpoles. They had guns. They were in the trees. They had knives. They had bear spray. They had all kinds of weapons. And Donald Trump is saying, take the mags down. They're not here to hurt me. They're here to hurt them. Take the magnetometers down. Take them down. And you know what's really crazy is that when Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene and all these insurrectionists, all these people that hate this country so much that they need to try to overturn it with violence. When they got the majority with 4 lousy seats, but that's the majority, 4 seats. When they got the majority, what'd they do? They took the magnetometers down so that people can bring their weapons into the committee rooms in Congress. And they voted for that. They're not trying to solve any of the problems that we have. They're not trying to regulate the railroads. They're not trying to, do anything. Nothing at all. They're not trying to save Social Security. They're not trying to pay down the debt. As a matter of fact, you know what they're talking about? 70 Republicans. This is just an aside. We could do a whole day show on this alone. But 70 Republicans are now co-sponsoring a bill to make the 2017 Trump tax cuts, which were never paid for, permanent. So here they are threatening to default the United States because of the deficit. The debt is too high. It's too much money on the government credit card. And they are literally sponsoring a bill that would add $3 trillion more dollars to that very deficit that they're so alarmed about. This is such oligarchy. I mean, it is such greed. It's they're not done stealing. You understand? And let me tell you something. The donor class, the elites, the people that are doing this to us because we are disinformed, misinformed. People are blinded to who's really causing havoc in this country, who's really stealing, who's really trying to shrink the government so it could drown it in a bathtub so they can get away with even more murder. The donor class is actually all about Ron DeSantis now. Why? Because they want Trumpism with all the racism and all the attacks on vulnerable people in our culture. They want all this, all this war on ideas, this banning of books, this, keeping people really stupid. Really, I mean, it's not bad and it's not good enough for them that you have a good, solid 30% of the population of the United States of America that's misinformed, disinformed, and ill-informed. No, now they want people actually dumbed down even further, and so they want books banned. They want a war on ideas, okay? And they got parents who don't even trust their own parenting anymore. Like, concentrate on what's going on in your house. How about that? How about concentrating on what your family values are and teaching those to your child, and stop worrying about, what's in a book, as if somebody's going to read a book and, I don't know, I read a book and now I'm gay. I read a book and now I want to be a boy. It doesn't happen like that. As a matter of fact, this war on women, holy crap. In Virginia yesterday, okay? In Virginia yesterday, the Democratic House was trying to block a bill that would allow for the government to get a warrant to search a woman's menstrual app. There's apps for that. So if you don't have regular periods, or if you do have regular periods and you're very proud that you're very regular, you might actually be putting your menstrual cycle information into this app. And in Virginia, they want to be able to serve a search warrant on a girl. Maybe she had a miscarriage. To serve a warrant on a girl and get her menstrual app information to see whether or not she was more than 15 weeks pregnant. To see whether or not she had, taken Plan B, to see whether or not she's taken mifepristone or what. I mean, honestly, and we were very close to defeating that bill. And then the governor of Virginia blocked it so that the ban on warrants, he said, the legislature has no business telling the Department of Justice in Virginia what it can and cannot apply to do in a warrant. Separation of powers, I swear to God. This story just blew my mind yesterday. So the Democratic-led Senate, sorry, not the House, the Senate in Virginia, and half of the Senate's Republican members wanted to ban search warrants for menstrual data stored in apps on mobile phones or other electronic devices. Okay. Well, the Aunt Lydia of public safety there, her name's Maggie Cleary, swear to God. So Aunt Lydia she's Glenn Youngkin's Deputy Secretary of Public Safety. She told the courts subcommittee that it's not the legislature's responsibility to restrict the scope of a search warrant, okay? She said any health information on any app is available via a search warrant, and we believe that that should continue to be the case. And so they were able to table the bill, knowing that he would veto it anyway. And he insisted that doctors should be held criminally responsible if they violate his ban, his abortion ban. Anyway, that's just another aspect of it. So now you have, a war on women, which we all are living. And then you have the war on the most vulnerable of our society, our children. So you have a bunch of people, Republicans, who are targeting transgendered kids in healthcare. They're trying to tell doctors, again, what is criminal and what is not criminal, what procedures, what not procedures. And I wanted to know, how many kids are we really talking about here? How many transgendered kids under the age of 18, I say our children, right, are receiving puberty blockers, which is part of this legislative move to criminalize doctors, to hold them in guilty of felonies for providing abortion care for women, even when there are fetal abnormalities that cannot possibly produce a living, breathing human being at the end of the pregnancy. They say, hey, let the woman get septic and die. We just don't give a damn. We're not going to allow it. Any doctor that tends to her is going to be held criminally responsible. So I wanted to know how many transgendered kids got puberty blockers.
Connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Ron DeSantis is tapping into the bloodstream of a party that wants to take America back 50 years. And he is refusing to show leadership and suggest let's look towards the next 50. There's no other way to approach this. I mean, often overlooked is that one of the first things he did was eliminate majority-minority districts. He set up his own election police force. And of the 20 people he arrested, 15 or 17, I believe, were African-American. He is somebody that now has attacked African-American education. He is attacking any type of liberal arts education, as he just did at New College down in the Sarasota area. It is a dangerous move. Donald Trump is uniquely dangerous because he would shred the Constitution. Ron DeSantis is uniquely dangerous on cultural issues and his strive to take the nation back 50 years.
And he's willing to call a constitutional convention to change the Constitution, to attack the most vulnerable among us, okay? Pregnant women, children, LGBT members of our culture, of our community, and they're especially like focused in a laser-like fashion on the sexuality of children. This is an issue for them. This is a big damn issue for them. I don't know if you realize how big this, attack on transgendered youth is. And it's going to be a major political issue in 2024, which starts, by the way, a year from now. A year from now is when the primaries happen, right? And the Republican legislatures across this country have decided there's 300 bills in 33 states that want to limit transgender and lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer rights this year. That's more than double the number of bills that were filed in 2022. And what they seek to do is ban certain, I'm not opining here, I'm reading this from a Reuters article, just in case you need me to cite my source, no problem. Republican legislatures across the United States have escalated a campaign to ban certain health care for transgendered youth, in some cases seeking to charge parents and doctors with child abuse if they provide treatment. So we already have doctors who are terrified that they will be charged with felonies for giving, abortion care to women who have absolutely no prayer in giving birth to a healthy, living, breathing baby because the baby's organs are not in the body cavity. They're outside of the body. And the woman is facing a septic pregnancy, meaning she'll die too. Oh, well, too bad for you. And scaring the bejesus out of doctors who say she's going to die. Let her die. Let her die. It's the same thing with the COVID vaccine, this disinformation. So I wanted to know, why are there 300 bills in 33 states? How many kids are we talking about that are being given puberty blockers as a solution to body dysmorphia, which is what it's called in medical terms? So I looked at the last 4 years for which there are numbers, and it goes to 2021. So it's 2017 to 2021. Do you know how many children in a country of 340 million human beings received puberty blockers? 3,500. You're talking like a 100th. I don't even know. Somebody out there who does math, you could tell me like it's less than 1/10 of 1%. It's like 100th of a percent. Okay, 3,500 kids over the last 4 years have been prescribed puberty blockers as a solution for body dysmorphia. And they're going to legislate in 33 states to make that child abuse 3,500, and it's going to be front and center as a voting issue, as if 3,500 children's discomfort matters at all to anybody who's working in a warehouse, matters at all to any rail workers, matters at all to anybody with a small business, to anybody who's a vice president, to anybody who's trying to, engage in generational wealth creation, as if that has anything to do with us surviving or thriving or being a decent, wholesome society. 3,500 kids. And they're focusing like a laser on these 3,500 kids. This is a sickness. This, Hitler did it with gay people. I just so you refresh your recollection of how many people died in the Holocaust and who was targeted as being to blame for the Weimar Republic's hyperinflation. Because that's what started the whole thing. Hyperinflation, meaning you needed a wheelbarrow full of Deutschmarks to buy a loaf of bread. Hyperinflation, where a Deutschmark was practically a worthless piece of paper. And that's what caused people to be so aggrieved that they felt that they didn't trust the system, they didn't trust the banks, they didn't trust the legislature, they didn't trust the chancellor. They wanted one guy to take control because they distrusted government so much. And that led to World War II, okay? And in the end, it led to the final solution. But you know who was to blame? Obviously, you know who they blamed. But do you know that gay people were also included in the blame? Well, this is now happening to our children, to 3,500 unlucky kids who are uncomfortable in their gender identity. 3,500 kids. And this is who we have to stop the world for and be aggrieved at. For causing your lot in life? Are you freaking kidding me? So you have a train derailment, let's say, that is carrying hazardous material that is making the trains too long and too heavy and too few people to check them, and bearings that are burning down the track, catching fire, and a train derails. Now, if you are unfortunate enough to live there, your wealth, which is your house or your ranch or your cattle, it's worthless, right? Because there's now benzene in the water, let's say. That didn't happen, but let's say. So everything that you worked for is worthless, and that is what is aggravating you. So let's blame 3,500 kids who are uncomfortable in their gender identity and say they're the cause of it. I don't even get how, but you see, that's what propaganda does. It clouds the solution to the problem because you're blaming the wrong portion of society, or you're blaming people that have nothing to do with Norfolk Southern. I mean, using children's sexual identity as a political tool to make people scream at school board members who make, what, like $30,000 a year to be a school board member? I mean, this is insanity. Unless you understand that there are people that want to steal from you still, because it's never enough, because their greed is uncontrollable. Then you can start figuring stuff out, right?
Clear for takeoff. Randi 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
When you look to see they have stuff about intersectionality, abolishing prisons, that's a political agenda.
What Florida Governor DeSantis is doing is actually shaping national educational standards. This is no longer just about the Stop Woke Act that affects what happens in Florida, or in the case where he has now taken over one of the colleges and literally banned any notion of diversity and inclusion, which is now extending to the bureaucracies of the university. I mean, the notion of a chilling effect and self-censorship on what teachers think they might be able to teach is only now being tested. Florida is a laboratory of fascism at this point. The impact on this is national in scope, and we have to consider that in light of DeSantis's own plans.
So that is not me saying that. That is a Harvard professor saying that. That is Khalil Gibran Muhammad commenting on how this country is moving towards fascism, and Florida is a fascist freaking laboratory, okay? Where if Ron DeSantis can get away with, penalizing doctors for tending to women, or penalizing doctors for tending to like the 2 kids in the entire state that might want to try a puberty blocker to keep them from committing suicide, and he can become the Republican nominee, this thing gets nationalized. This move towards fascism becomes the movement. I mean, these are very intelligent. These are very well read. These are very smart people who are telling you this. This is David Jolly, who was a Republican from Florida. Okay, he quit because he couldn't take what he was seeing. Okay, he couldn't. It's like Kinzinger too, and Liz Cheney. Some dyed-in-the-wool conservative Republicans are like, this is not Republican. This is not conservative. This is fascism.
There's a part of it in which, Kevin McCarthy and Marjorie Greene are ridiculous, right? They're sort of funny. And George Santos, it's easy to laugh at him. But some of it's funny, haha, and some of it's funny, frightening. Yeah. Because what they're doing with all of these memes and shtick is they're kind of softening up the electorate for some really bizarre things that they want to do. Banning LGBTQ books nationwide. That's big, big government.
It's huge.
Yeah, it would be funny if it wasn't so dangerous, because they are in power and they might have even more power in 2024. Look, on immigration, this is a party whose most recent achievement was to separate innocent children from their parents, many of those kids never to be reunited again. And that is actually a policy they would likely pursue. On this banning books issue, and I've got to say, it's not just Marjorie Taylor Greene and George Santos, it is Ron DeSantis and other governments. Let's break down the absurdity. And I honestly think you got to attack the absurdity of it. First and foremost, this is a group of people that believe reading a book can make you gay.
Right.
Think about it. That's their biggest concern. If you read a book, you might decide you're gay. Secondly, qualitatively, their assessment is that if you're LGBTQ, that somehow that's wrong, that you're not allowed to be, that somehow that's an offense to society. And then here's the other buzzword you hear. This is what they wrap it in, and I think this has to be attacked head on, Joy. They say that parents and kids are under attack. You heard it from Sarah Sanders in the response to Joe Biden. You hear it from DeSantis. You hear it from Marjorie Taylor Greene. Parents and children are under attack. No, they are not. Kids are being exposed to diversity for the first time in modern America, and that's a good thing. And for people who say Ron DeSantis, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and others, that somehow society has this outsized influence on their kids, maybe they need to focus on their parenting and not on society.
And the thing that's ironic about all of this, David, is that they think the solution to what they see as societal ills is big, big government. It's the governor of Florida telling you specifically what books you can read. It's the government deciding specifically what teachers can teach. It's literal government thought control. And that's what they accuse the left of, but they're the ones saying, no, no, no. Don't worry about it, parents. We got this. We'll put the books into the hands of your children. Wipe them off of a librarian's shelves. We're the librarian now. That's pretty ironic.
So what was one of the first things that, a fascist government did back in the day, right? Well, they don't want you to know the history, but they burned books. Ideas are a threat. Why? Because if you see ideas, if you can actually process ideas, different ideas, all kinds of ideas, good ideas, bad ideas, mediocre ideas, ideas that work, ideas that don't work, you can solve your problem. If you're a decent parent, you can teach your children the values you want taught. But here we have big, giant, oozing, pussy, gravy sore government that's going to solve the problem for you. They're going to show you what books your children should read, can read. They're going to show you what, the idea that they are hyperventilating about 3,500 children's sexuality is so insanely obvious to anyone who will look at it that it's not normal. It's not normal. Brother David.
Never has been, sister, never will be. It's Fox-fueled, fear-based, Florida-fomenting Fascist Friday. You know, there are 4 pillars of fascism. There always have been. There's tentacles that reach out, but they are charismatic leadership, single-party rule under dictator or said leader, terror, fear, and economic control. And that's all in place in their agenda. You know, Isaac Asimov said it best. Any book that is worth banning is worth reading.
Yeah.
The 2 things you brought up, because a lot of things make me angry, disrespect to the troops. We've had this discussion before, but the 2 things that make me lethal are the subjugation of women and the de-innocencing, targeting of children.
Oh.
And between the thing in Virginia and between the 30, how many cases have 33 states? That percentage of possible transgender children, that 3,500, is still smaller than the percentage of, oligarchs that control the country and by extension the world's wealth. Fascism, I think we're at neo-fascism at this point. And it cannot be endured. There's a reason my top 10 list of movies for last year still includes Close, which is the Belgian film about the 2 closest brothers, 13-year-old boys who then go to high school. Only Ugly Cry, a movie gave me last year, and Women Talking. And I use that as an example because they don't want women talking, and they definitely want to de-innocentize, target the children, and it's false. There's no truth there. And we who see the truth have got to keep doing what you're doing, sister. It's us against them.
Well, there's very few of them, but they're very powerful. That's the scary part.
Back to Fox again.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very unequal playing field. The people who are telling you what to be angry at, to feed the grievance thing, those are the people that are very busy, taking the world's wealth and keeping it for themselves.
Exactly.
And it's a tiny, tiny, tiny little sliver of very, very elite people. Rupert Murdoch, the guys with, Elon Musk, the guys with billions and billions and Peter Thiel's and Foxconn people. It's literally a handful of people who it will never, ever, ever be enough. And dead people or dead children or dead women or septic women or senior citizens who are now thrown back into what Social Security was, designed
and
to.
And then there's that, yes, exactly.
Right, what Social Security was designed to alleviate, and that was poverty and seniors, poverty in the people who had worked their whole lives, their fingers to the bone, their legs, their backs were crooked.
The Social Security net.
I'm saying, but Wall Street wants that money. They want that money, right? So what I'm saying is that, there's a handful of people that are doing this, and all of the stuff that's ancillary to that is just a distraction. Totally. But when they go so low as to say dead people are the cost of doing business, or, dead children are the cost of doing business, like the NRA did, right? That's
the point I was trying to make, sister. Absolutely.
That's what I'm saying. When that is as low as they're showing you they will go, and that they're still it's still not bottom. That's when everybody has to orient themselves. That's when you have to say, okay, enough. They're picking on the children now. Now children can die, okay? The only thing that stopped COVID from being something that everyone would get vaccinated again was that children weren't dying. They weren't dying. And they kept emphasizing that it was only happening to old people. It was only happening to old people. But now they're going after the kids, too. This is sick, this is sad, and it's preventable. That's the beauty of everything. If you know what I'm saying to you, and if you know that's true, you can start voting that way.